Pete, what's a rip current?
A rip current is when the water is pulling in any direction. It could be going left to right, right to left. It could be pulling you out. Yesterday, I actually rescued a swimmer that was caught in a rip current in waist deep water. And this is something that happens almost every day at Rockaway Beach. This was my 5th civilian rescue. I swam over to the struggling swimmer. He had shouted help. I calmly instructed him to grab on to the nose of my surfboard, and we aimed towards the beach and we paddled in together. This happens all the time. The swimmer was caught in a rip current that was slowly but surely pulling out to sea. It wasn't a super strong rip current, but without a surfboard, if you're not the strongest swimmer, these things can be dangerous. It's always safer to be out there with a surfboard, and always wear your leash, especially if you're a beginner or not a strong swimmer, because in a worst case scenario, at least you can, grab your board and just float there and shout for someone to help you. Eventually, someone will probably come and help you. This young man shouted, help! So I swam over. I could see that he was just getting sucked out slowly. It wasn't a super strong rip current, but a lot of people in New York City aren't strong swimmers because it's a big city and not everyone's at the beach every day like me. But for surfing, typically there's a strong rip current here in Rockaway Beach whenever there's an east wind. That's the wind that's blowing left to right when you're at the beach. You'll see the flags going this way. That's because the predominant swell direction for our waters is southeast, coming in at an angle already. So if that's accompanied by a strong east wind, there's going to be a sweep. And you can go like 10 blocks in 20 minutes sometimes if the east wind is really strong. And it's especially strong during low tide, just because the water is shallower and that shallow water is just moving a little bit faster. We can have a strong rip current going right to left if there's a very strong west wind. I'm talking, 15 miles per hour or stronger. And we do get that a lot in the late fall and winter season. We get a lot of westerly winds. So definitely when you get to the beach, take a look at the flag. There's a big American flag over there. And always check which way the wind is blowing. And have an idea of what the rip current is going to be doing. So a lot of places around the world, the rip currents aren't very strong when there's very small waves. It's when there's a bigger swell or strong winds that you're going to get more of a rip. But, even if it's just 1 or 2 foot waves, there could be a small rip current. It's a lot more dangerous for swimmers, I would say. I feel like you're a lot safer with your surfboard, and especially if you're on a big board, you can paddle against the rip current. They always say if the rip current is sucking you out, you gotta paddle sideways to get out of that rip current. You don't want to paddle straight in against it because it'll just be pushing you back and you can be caught in the same spot for 10, 20 minutes until you wear yourself out. So the best thing to do if you're caught in a rip current that's pulling out is to paddle sideways against it. There's signs around the world that instruct you to do this, but it's an important thing to know if you're going to be out in the ocean a lot. Here in Rockaway Beach, we have jetties. There's a jetty roughly every 4 blocks. And when a big swell comes, I'm talking, 3 to 6 foot waves, the water will come in, it'll rush up the beach, but that water doesn't just stay on the beach, otherwise it would be flooded every time there's a swell. The water needs to go back out in the ocean. So the water typically flushes back out by the rock jetty. This is the rock jetty. The water comes in and it'll kind of funnel back out right next to the rocks. So if you're a pedestrian swimmer and you're just swimming over here near the rocks, you could find yourself in a situation where you just get sucked out to sea. And if you're not a strong swimmer, that's dangerous. People drown every summer, and it's sad, but if you're a surfer and you see someone in trouble like that, you can paddle over and tell them to get on the front of your board. But for surfers, especially here in Long Island, Rockaways, we use this to our advantage. We paddle out by the jetty because we know there's going to be water sucking out, and you don't have to paddle out as hard. You can do a few strokes, and like sometimes you can get out there with dry hair, even on a big 6-foot day. So we use that to our advantage. But if you're not a strong swimmer, not a strong paddler, you probably shouldn't be out when it's 6 foot anyway. But yeah, just be aware that by the jetty, usually the water is funneling back out. And typically the rip currents here are stronger near the jetties. Sometimes, you know, if you're on the opposite side of the jetty, on the left side when facing the beach, the water pulls really strong towards it. So if you're surfing like this side of the jetty, say, and you say, oh no, I'm getting close to the rocks, and you start paddling in when you're like 20 feet from the rocks, it might just suck you right over there really fast. So if you're gonna get out because you're getting close to the jetty, it's often better to get out way in advance. You see, oh, the jetty's like 100 feet away, I should start making my way in. Or just paddle far out and go around the jetty and just come in on the next beach. You don't want to be trying to paddle in on this side of the jetty when it's only like 20 feet away, because it'll suck you right in there. And I've seen people get stuck in the rocks, have to climb up onto the rocks, they're walking in, you know, they lost a fin of their board, you know, they're okay, but they're doing a walk of shame now because their board is damaged. So it's always better to go around the jetties or just kind of go in when it advance. Yeah, always pay attention to what obstacles might be at your local beach. And if it's a new spot that you haven't been to, it's good to always talk with the locals, be like, oh, are there any hidden rocks here, you know, boulders, or I don't know, a broken piece of the boardwalk I should be aware of. So, yeah, always surf with a friend, and if you're new to a spot, always try to chat it up with the locals and try to get to know a little bit about that lake. Hope this was helpful, and I'm going to keep these videos coming. Subscribe. See you in Rockaway. Woo!